I think we're just going to go ahead and get started, although maybe she can't. Here, I'm going to let that person in. So hello, and welcome to this Wet Cement Press Kitchen Table Reading Series. I'm Thoreau Lovell, the publisher and one of the editors at Wet Cement Press. And the other editors are Michelle Murphy in Reno, Nevada, who I thought wasn't going to be able to join us, but I believe is actually online. And Barbara Rother in Asheville, North Carolina, who I can see is with us. So like I said, I'm the publisher and one of the editors at Wet Cement. We started publishing books in 2019, although it seems like a lot longer than that to me. Our ninth book, A Boy Named Boy, Growing Up Black in White Town During the 1960s by Earl S. Braggs, will be out early next year. So to learn more about the press and what we're up to, go to our website at wetcementpress.com, or you can visit our Facebook page or Instagram account, and those are both available at symbol Wet Cement Press. So I'm sure most of you realize that it's pretty hard for, forgot to turn my phone off. It's pretty hard for a small press like us to reach a larger audience. And you know, there's a couple of things that you all can do if you feel motivated. And one of them is that word of mouth really does work. So if you read a book of ours that you like, if you could tell a friend or two or three, it would be fantastic. If you could, you know, if you feel motivated to leave a positive comment on Amazon or Goodreads or some other book source, that would also be incredible. Or any other sort of word getting out you could do for us on social media, we would be forever grateful. So today we're celebrating the publication of Andrea Clark Libin's book, Orphan of the Moon, Notebook of a Girl in a Moscow Station. And Andrea is going to start by reading a few short sections, and then she'll be in conversation with Karen Russell, Idra Novey, Maya, Lydia, Bushell, and Doretta Lau. Wet Cement Press editor Michelle Murphy wrote that, quote, Orphan of the Moon, a novella of prose poems, drawings, and collages, tells a tale of survival, wary friendships, a longing for family, and a search for a makeshift home that can hold childhood's phantoms. And Idra Novey, the poet, translator, and novelist who will be joining us later, said, quote, how exhilarating to encounter a novella this spectacularly imaginative, with every page and collage adding new elements to the building complexity of this resonant story. And finally, Karen Russell, the well-known novelist who is also joining us in a few minutes, has written that, quote, Orphan of the Moon is a living, breathing, hybrid work unlike anything I've ever read. An orphan's notebook exhumed from the Moscow station and entrusted to your own red heart. An astonishing evocation of the subterranean universe of childhood, at once devastating and inspiring, a young girl's yearning for the world she's lost, her fresh strawberries, her birth name, and love. A fractured song of forgetting and remembering, and a testament to the death-defying power of art. Nice words indeed. So before I introduce everyone and we get started, I want to mention that Andrea is donating the royalties for the sales of Orphan of the Moon this fall to two amazing organizations, the Loveland Foundation Therapy Fund in the US and the Women's Resource Center in Cambodia. So I encourage you to Google both of these organizations to learn more about the important work that they're doing. That was the Loveland Foundation Therapy Fund and the Women's Resource Center in Siem Reap, Cambodia. And if you're interested in getting a copy of Orphan of the Moon, of course, you can go to Amazon or wherever you want. But if you'd like to save 20%, you can go directly to our website. And once again, that is wetcementpress.com to get that discount. So, since there's a lot of participants, I'm going to try to keep the intros short and sweet, which isn't easy given everybody's a level of accomplishment and that our participants have. So if you're curious about any of them, please go to our website. There's a lot more information on everybody there. Andrea Clark Libin is a writer and visual artist whose work can be found in a number of publications in the US and abroad. Orphan of the Moon, Notebook of a Girl in a Moscow Station is her first book. Andrea has taught at Columbia University, Pratt Institute, Long Island University, Brooklyn, and Kadir Has University, Istanbul. Most recently, she has been teaching workshops in Cambodia for children and teachers at an NGO village school and at the Women's Resource Center. Born and raised in Manhattan, she currently divides her time between Brooklyn, Asia, and Europe. A graduate of Sarah Lawrence College and Columbia University's MFA writing program, Andrea is at work finishing a novel. Karen Russell is the author of numerous books, including Swamplandia, Orange World, and most recently, Sleep Donation. Among her many accolades, she was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction. She won the National Magazine Award for Fiction, and her book, Swamplandia, was listed as one of the New York Times' 10 best books of 2011. She graduated from Northwestern University and received her MFA from Columbia University. Born and raised in Miami, Florida, she now lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband and 2 children. But I think she may be joining us from Miami, I'm not entirely sure. And Idra Novey is the author of the novels Those Who Knew and Ways to Disappear, as well as the poetry collections Exit Civilian, The Next Country, and Clarice the Visitor. Her works as a translator include Clarice Lispector's novel The Passion According to G.H., and a co-translation with Ahmad Nadalizadeh of Iranian poet Garous Abdol Malakian's Lean Against This Late Hour. Boy, I hope I didn't totally mangle those names. I tried. And Doretta Lau is the author of the short story collection, How Does a Single Blade of Grass Thank the Sun?, which was shortlisted for the City of Vancouver Book Award and named by The Atlantic as one of the best books of 2014. She has written on arts and culture for Art Forum International, as well as numerous other publications. She is working on a novel called We Are Underlings. And finally, Maya Lydia Bushell is a writer, visual artist, and musician from Brooklyn. She is a graduate of Trinity College Dublin, where she completed a joint Bachelor's of Arts degree in English literature and the history of art and architecture. From 2018 to 2019, she co-edited Icarus magazine, Ireland's oldest arts publication still in existence. She has been an intern with Ugly Duckling Press and a bibliographic intern for Printed Matter, Inc. So a huge thanks to all the participants for joining us today to celebrate Andrea's debut book, Orphan of the Moon. I think Andrea is going to start by reading a short selection from Orphan. Then Kendra, Idra, Doretta, and Maya will join in for a free-flowing conversation. And Andrea will wrap things up by reading another short selection from Orphan at the end. So once again, if you have any questions or comments, use the chat feature. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Andrea.
Wow, thank you so much, Thoreau, for that introduction and for hosting this event and publishing the book, and fellow editors, Michelle and Barbara. Wow, it's so great to see all of you from different parts of the world in this liminal space. So thank you so much. And thank you, Doretta, Idra, and Maya for joining in, and Karen, who's actually in Portland. So great. So I'm just going to read a few pieces from the beginning. We are parented by air, siblinged by glue. I will school you. Breathe in the vapors and the fumes will crawl into your heart, haunt you like a shadow, ragged eyeballs. This much I can tell you. Put one ear to my chest, the other to my lips. Ivan was the one to find me huddled in a pistol in the station, weeping fits of woe. Mama, mamushka, why have you gone to church to pray and left me to weep, weep, weep? Yvonne rescued me to the tunnels, sheared my head so I'd look like a boy, so bugs wouldn't creepy crawl my pretty braids. Yvonne nabbed stray dolls and stuffed bears, dropped unawares by tiny top fingers. He'd find them on the terminal floor, wide-eyed like corpses. Yvonne lined the dolls up on an empty apple crate where I slept, placed a yellow-haired girlie on my cardboard mat. Yvonne big brothered me till he was vampired by glue. His heart was hollowed out and he evaporated in the night. Now the dolls mock me with their plastic stares. We seep out of hiding as day breaks. The station sanctuaries us in the crack between dawn and morning, a truce of daylight, a promise never met. You might have felt the solace lighting candles in a church, but we don't pray here. We suck in air, glue, try to hold on, don't let go. Then the rush, rush, rush parades through, and we're the nuisance, guilting you on your morning commute. Shoo, shoo, you say, toss us a kopeck, pretend we're not coattailing you for coin. Try and forget our Marushka stares, our glue dripping noses before the metro doors clang shut and you're home safe, comrade. Only you will hear my whispers when you say your goodnight prayers. We were born children of blood, orphans of the moon. Dark spits at me, I spit back. We don't count days here. You would be afraid, but I'm not. Sleep whispers, flutters her breath hot on my cheeks, eyelashes. Stay awake here for a week and you become immortal. But we don't count days. I'm not fooled by sleep. She's sneaky, tries to push you into the black hole, taunts you. Somewhere out there is the Milky Way, orange peels, skates, potatoes roasting in the earth, a mattress of peacock feathers, wool mittens. Don't worry, I'm no fool. I don't wish for things like mama, mamushka, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Sparks fleck the darkness. A train hums through the walls against my fingertips. Light, last licks of a candle singes out. Night burns, beckons. You would be duped. Not me. We don't count days here. When Yvonne found me in the piss stalls, he cut off my braids with his knife. Hopscotch snagged me a crate. They tucked me in near the steam pipes, ran a lighter to flash their names, tagged on the wall in neon green. Hush, hush, they hummed, fed me a candy bar, took drags off a cigarette in the darkness, told me she'd be back for me in the morning, till I fell asleep till their whispers. Day glared through the station, and they schooled me in their ways, filching cigarettes, donuts, candy, glue, dodging cops, pedophiles, gangbangers, all the while palms out for kopecks, food, disdain. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So I realized that I forgot to mention that there's an element to Andrea's book that isn't obvious when you hear her read from it, even though the text stands alone, I think, quite well. That is that it's really a collage book or novella, and I think you need to sort of see what that looks like. So I'm going to try something that is to share the screen and just show a couple of the pages so you can see what they look like, and then we'll get started with this conversation. So if this doesn't work, then we'll get started with the conversation without sharing the screen. Let's see. Okay, so somebody tell me if you can see that.
We can see it.
Okay, great, perfect. So, and you can still see it, I hope. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, great. So here's what, the opening looks like. And then you can see, these are just sample pages, not really they are in order, but not consecutive. How this notion of a notebook where the pages have been torn out and pasted up on a board kind of continues throughout the book, with some sections that are more graphically intense with handwritten text like we see here. Oops, and here. So that's just a little flavor. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now and say that Andrea was also the artist of the book. So she created the text and the images. And with that, I think we're going to start the conversation. And I'm going to ask a question to get going, and then I'm going to step back and let everyone just run with it. So the question really, we're going to start with you, Doretta, because I know you have a background in writing about art and language. Just a sense of what your take is, or your experience of reading through this book and how the graphics and the collages and the text kind of work together, or how they worked for you at all.
Well, I was really interested in, when I got to the end of the book, seeing that there's sort of almost a conversation with William Blake and songs of innocence and experience. And so the book very much sits in a tradition of someone who has a capability of working with words in a beautiful and poetic way, and having this connection with visuals and allowing the visuals to kind of bring out some of those elements within the work. And also there's still an incredible sense of mystery with the way Andrea's drawn the figures and how that plays against the collage work. And you can kind of see the background I have is from a page in the book, and there's just something about being able to move through the text, and then the images start coming in, and there's a textural kind of choice in paper for the background, and it's just really alive. And you'll get to experience that when you have the book in your hands. But that kind of leads me to the question that I've been really wanting to ask Andrea, which is, when you were working on the book, did you come up with all the text first, or did you start kind of gathering materials and start drawing? What was that process like for you, just putting the book together?
Well, first off, thanks, Doretta, for having that observation about Blake, because Songs of Innocence and Experience definitely was echoing in my consciousness, of sort of the idea of creating this imagined diary of a homeless girl abandoned in the station, and that combination that the way that Blake does, and the innocence and the experience, where we just have like a kind of a shift in perspective, and sort of in her writing and looking out at her world, looking through both of those lenses of the innocence and experience. I wrote them together. The drawings that I did while I was writing. I wrote most of them by hand in a journal, and then later the collages happened. And actually, I was trying to find Russian candy wrappers, and I found this girl living out in Siberia online who sent me all of these candy wrappers, and it came in this big, beautiful envelope, and she had like preserved all the candy wrappers. And then I found clips of Soviet fashion magazines, or sort of just post-Soviet, and used those to then collage it. And then Thoreau was so incredible, and I gave him these actual paper pieces where I collaged on to have it sort of typewritten and some handwritten, and to try to capture that in the printed material so it would still feel those layers. And so Thoreau, who has such a great visual eye, was able to make that vision happen in this little book. So that was also really cool, because I wasn't sure how you could capture like the torn pages. I used like pieces of metro, Moscow metro station maps and construction paper from, paper bags and things like that to create the collages. Yeah. So.
I wondered how you got a hold of the candy wrappers. So it's just really exciting to hear this process of someone there collecting and kind of really just being a sort of collaborator across the world to come together to make this. And I don't know if anyone else on the panel had a question next, but I can always ask a question next and someone can jump in.
Yeah, sure. And Maya, feel free to jump in, and Doretta, you too.
The other thing is just I just know that you are someone who travels a lot, and you have this kind of engagement with the world. And a lot of times when we've met, it's in the last decade, it's been outside of the context that we've known each other. And the book opens up with the line, "Everywhere I go, I'm homeless. Everywhere I go is home." And I just wondered if you wanted to speak a bit on this idea of home and homelessness and traveling and that kind of inspiration on your work for your work.
Well, that phrase is sort of an ancient Chinese Zen phrase that, when lived in China, in Hangzhou for a semester, and have visited a lot, and traveled a lot with Chinese friends through the mountains to Zen monasteries. And that phrase has always really echoed on the travels, because somehow it's that feeling that, you're always home, well, on the inside, but also because of the connection between everyone. We're always connected in that way. Yeah. And Doretta and I have met, we run into each other. We got together in Hangzhou in China. And then when you were writing for the Venice Biennale, and John and I actually performed there, which was crazy. We ran into you there when you were there writing about it. So we meet in these amazing, dreamy places, and hopefully not too far in the future, we'll meet in one of them again. Thank you, Doretta. Karen, Idra, you wanna?
Well, I have a question about home and, the collage aspect of the book. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see you. There you are. Okay.
Oh, you can see me.
Yeah.
Because I wondered, in a way, your life has been a collage of all these different cultures and these different visual landscapes, and, and just thinking about the foods and the wrappers and the places you've traveled. On one hand, when I saw you start doing this collage work alongside the text, I was surprised, but then it also just felt in keeping, I think, with sort of like the collage that you've made of your life, of different countries and different experiences, working with vulnerable children in Cambodia, and, just thinking about those children. And, I know that you and John have like a long-term commitment with that community there. And then also writing about this girl and her vulnerabilities in the book. So it seemed both like in keeping with your sensibility as a writer, and also I think also just sort of with the the places that you travel and the sort of collage of your life. So I didn't know I was just thinking about that with hearing you talk about that. And I wondered if you have some thoughts on that.
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, speaking of the work we do in Cambodia and in particular, but in other places, the sort of theme is creative transformation and how creative expression is a transformative act and a healing act. So in doing this, sort of imagining the girl with her notebook, how creating these drawings and collages would be that kind of an act. But what you're saying is interesting. I like that. Collaging the different places together. Yeah.
Really lived an amalgam, of all these different places and just landscapes and colors and textures that I think have sort of settled on top of each other. And then you sort of settled on this art type that is also a similar thing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I like that observation. Yeah. Thank you.
Where were you living when you started doing the collages?
I'm not, when I started doing the collages I did in different places from New York to, this started in Moscow, actually, seeing a girl in the station. And then many years ago, and then I guess I was in China and Portugal and France and along the Mekong River. Yeah, so that is, it's a nice way to think about it.
Well, Tony will jump in and ask a question, if that's okay. And now you guys all see my Zoom alter ego. All the better for, my Mafia Don empire.
Your secret.
Has all kinds of strange associations. Andrea, it's so wonderful to see you, and I feel a little shy because I was ambushed by emotion in the middle of my in the recent past of all of your lives, I think, here in Portland. Wonderful to see so many people you love. For a second, I was like, "Who is that beautiful woman?" And then I realized it's Sasha. I mean,
I know
I'm reeling. I'm just reeling here. Not to embarrass you, Sasha, but I identified you with the help of Zoom. And yeah, it's just these are some of the writers I respect the most. And Andrea and I were in a workshop together 100 years ago, and our professor is here, and Doretta, and I don't know if you can see her, Elena's here. And that was such an incubator of the imagination, and Andrea's work had such a tremendous, and continues to have such a tremendous impact on me. But it had been a while since I got to, to be able to physically hold it in my hands is an amazing thing. And I wanted to tell you this, I have a son, Oscar. He's 3.5, and he's already at this developmental mile marker where he's realized I'm really bad at drawing. He's like, that dog looks like a clock. This is terrible. Anyway, he was like, your books have no pictures, which was mostly true. And he was looking at this one, and he asked, "What's this book about, Mama?" And I said, "Oh, it's about a girl." I said, she's in a Moscow train station. And just looking through the pictures, he said, "Somebody hurts her." And I mean, I just, this book hurt me and inspired me so much. And I just thought it was astonishing. I really mean it when I say I've never read anything like it. And I also thought it reads like a poem in places. And then it's also kind of, as appropriate, it's scatological. There's all of the stuff of life, isn't it? And I was, just so struck by it. So this is going to get to a question, I promise, which is maybe, I was also so, you heard that in the section Andrea read, how there's so much ferocious life hunger in this book. And I just loved that, right? This sort of, you're watching, all kinds of menacing things stalk the periphery, and you sort of there's not like a linear chronology exactly, how could there be, but you're really experiencing in real time all of the shrapnel this child is taking on, and it's as literal as losing your braids. These boys come to ungirl her. And then there will be, this beautiful moment where a memory resurfaces and you see that she's nourishing herself with the memory of love. And Babu is back, you know, I mean, there's no arms to carry her. And I was just so impressed to see this child mixing her own medicine in that way. And it's different than a novel, right? These characters surface sort of obliquely, and a lot of it is happening in the art and even like the handwriting, you know, the tilt of it. And so I guess I wondered a little bit, you could talk about your revision process, because it was almost unimaginable to me. It also feels like this book was just channeled, but I was like, no, it must have been really material. And to make, you know, to figure out where the clouds are going to part and there is going to be a memory of love, you know, and where and how much to suggest about the darkness that she's experiencing, you know.
Well, thank you, Karen. And yeah, I'm just so moved to, you know, have everyone here and the participants who are all writers, artists, beings who I so admire. And so just to say again how honored I am. The revision process, yeah, there was, you know, a bit of revision. As I said, I did start, you know, by hand writing these, and over time, kind of in a journal or different journals and even scraps of paper. And then, you know, in transcribing them, typing them, doing that sort of editing process, and yeah, just kind of channeling this girl. And some of it is a little bit retrospective, these little moments, sort of, it's maybe a little enigmatic if you're reading it, because I want a little mystery about sort of, there's not a big story, but so yeah, just sort of imagining how, you know, I like the way you said it, she's mixing her own medicine, and these boys who have sort of become her protectors and siblings offer her those moments by giving her, you know, a hideaway, a place to be, to guard her from the dangerous characters roaming the station. And so that, I don't know if that really answers your question, but
No, it does. I mean, I was even thinking, reading this, I just felt like you wake up to how carefully kids observe the world, and they're just watching these children in particular. I mean, I think they're so amazing to stage it in this subterranean place where everyone is like coming and going about the business of their life, and they're really sort of like ghosts chained to the spot, you know, and they're getting to observe something else about life. And the tattoo man terrified me. The idea, you know, at one point they say you could read the story of his life and his fucked up tattoos. And it's just what children attend to, you know, and especially if you're in that kind of traumatized state, which you're hyper vigilant, you know, on the lookout for. And I mean, it's amazing to see with her eyes, to really see with her eyes. And I think the art evokes so much of that state, and also the beauty that she's not gone blind to, you know.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I wanted it all to really take place in the station, so in this one little world, subculture, and they're just maybe two moments, I think, where they are outside the station.
Yeah, I love even something about these partially erased maps, because it sort of felt to me like it's different than like a linear momentum, right? But you feel memories kind of straining towards wholeness, you know, something wants to be born, or something wants to, I was thinking this line from a poem, the hidden wanting to be found, you know, and there's like such a magnetism inside the art. But I loved it so much, Andrea. I'm yakking too much.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Yeah, I mean, this actually was originally was a part of, the novel that I've been working on for a long time. And at the same time, I always imagined it as its own contained piece as well. And so it was kind of like very wonderful to be able to put it into this actual diary form.
Right, and that's bounded by location in this way too. I really felt that kind of the claustrophobia of it also, but then this whole universe opens up as you read. I don't know if
Yeah, I
Maya
was
wanted
thinking
to-
about it, rereading the book, remembering this character within the world of the novel. And the novel also moves between different interiorities from different characters. And it was really sort of just this beautiful act, the way that you took this character out and gave her this expanded narrative, outside the world of the novel. And you just did sort of this deep dive into her history. And I wondered how that impacted spending time with this character and in this one physical space, and then seeing who she is in the novel. How has that sort of been for you?
That's an interesting question. I'm still seeing what happens with that. Because now that this character's had this one space, I'm not really sure yet how present she'll be in the end, but she will be.
Well, I think it's hard when you get to know a character this well, and then suddenly she's sort of a bit player in this other book.
Right.
Gave her this one woman show.
Yeah. Yeah, really good question. I love that. It's inspiring. And Maya, thank you for coming. You as a poet and nonfiction writer, but also someone who makes collage.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get to engage with your work at any time, but particularly in the event that it involves a medium that I feel so engaged with myself. And I think the thing that struck me when looking at the visuals you had created for the book was how much the collages and integrated illustration and like handwritten work reminded me of the space of a metro station. Either, I've never been to Moscow, but having grown up taking the subway my whole life, there are so many of these elements. There's graffiti, there's advertisement that's oftentimes edited by people. Like people scratch things out, they'll draw in sections, they'll write things. There's food, so there's like wrappers all over the place, and there's advertisements and graffiti, and it's such a visual place to move in and travel through. And so I was really struck by how your collages reflected that visual space and how tactile they were, and the crumple of the candy wrappers and the ripped edges of paper. You could there's such vibrancy to that work, and it really complemented the writing so well. And I don't know, I haven't read a work like that in a very long time, and particularly coming out, just having graduated from a degree that was related to both art and writing, but they could feel so separate most of the time. And the few instances that I did get to engage with texts where there were integrated visual elements, that was the work that I felt most interested in. And so getting to read your work, which is such the perfect embodiment of that, was really exciting for me. And I was wondering, just given the fact that I felt, again, myself having not ever visited Russia, Moscow, or having traveled through the Moscow metro, but as a lifelong New Yorker like yourself, I was wondering if you could talk about the experience, particularly maybe aesthetically or visually, of traveling through that transportation system. I feel like so many people who travel, a lot of times, especially in big cities, there's so much comparison that goes on between transportation systems, like which are the dirtiest, which are the cleanest, which are the most efficient, that it's just always something that struck me and something I find myself noticing when I travel. And so I was just wondering if you could talk about your experience of being there, and then, you know, obviously it shapes your entire book.
Wow, well, thank you for that observation, because yeah, someone who also grew up, you know, in the New York subway system, was pretty gritty growing up. You know, that's a really good point, because I think in many ways I did draw on that, you know, sense, like these little hidden spaces that exist in the subway, and like people I knew who did graffiti, for example, and they would, you know, find ways to tunnel through the station. Or I grew up on 100th Street, and there was this sort of abandoned station at 94th Street that was no longer a station, but you could kind of glimpse it when you passed it. So those of you who know what I'm talking about. And you know, I was imagining with the girl trying to only draw on elements that would be found in the station. So, you know, like you said, scraps, or seeing the graffiti, and the kids she's with are doing graffiti, you know, making lists on scraps of paper, the candy wrappers. And the Moscow subway stations, those of you who know, pretty amazing. I mean, it's very deep it's very, very deep. You know, Stalin designed it so that the bombs, you know, wouldn't get there down below. And many of the stations are works of art, and have a theme, and they're just incredible. And this station she's in is actually a bigger station, a station where you take the train to St. Petersburg. So it's more of one of the main big stations where you can actually, so it'd be more like a, you know, Times Square, Penn Station, but in Moscow. And so, yeah, I drew on that just experience you're describing of just kind of immersing in that different environment. And what you said, though, is interesting, because now that I'm thinking about it, I really did draw on both experiences. So thank you for that. And I was thinking, everyone here today, like, Karen, you in Sleep Donation have drawings in the book. Not that you did, but I'm curious what inspired that.
If only I could. I mean, those are collage artists, these amazing Italian collage artists, and I think, you know, it's not as integrated. It's not this kind of masterwork. But I was really happy to include these illustrations because it's a print book. And also I just find, you know, nightmares, in paraphrase, I've failed to convey their horror, and the same goes for dreams. You know, there's something about linear language that just maybe isn't quite suited to capturing how bizarre that phantasmagoria really can be. So I was happy to have something that felt maybe a little closer to the nature of dreams, and just sort of a grammatical subject, verb, object sentence.
Yeah, well, they are really dreamy. And now in the print form, the book was originally digital, so it's really wonderful.
Oh, I felt this way too about, I mean, you know, in John's book too, it's such a pleasure to hold a physical, especially in the era of Zoom. I'm so happy to be Zooming with you guys, but I have to say that third dimension,
I know.
Five stars.
Yeah, because I thought of it like, Idra, you too have now done 2 collaborations with Erica Baum. One was a book, and now this one you did in it. And what was that like for you, that relationship where you're working with an artist in dialogue with your work?
Well, as Karen said, you know, when somebody else is bringing the visuals, there's like this nice serendipity to it, of maybe that sensibility of somebody else sort of colliding with your own sensibility and seeing what new meaning they make together. But with your book, what's so beautiful about this was seeing you, who I know is this really gorgeous lyrical writer, and then there was this lyrical visual side of you. And so I think that what collided was like these two aspects of you as like a seer and a thinker, and seeing how they come together, you know, because I think it's, you know, it's your sensibility, but sort of manifesting in these two different ways, and then seeing what new meaning comes between them. So, you know, I think there's still an element of surprise to that. Of course, not nearly as much so as when it's like with another person. When I was working with Erica, because it was during the pandemic for this most recent collaboration we did, you know, we only sent each other files. So it was sort of like, as Karen was saying, that like beautiful experience of holding something that's physical object, get to just, you know, I haven't been into a museum in so long, and here are these collages. It was just like, it was like getting visual chocolate in the mail.
Oh, you got it in the mail. I love it.
Yes.
Mail art. Maya does a lot of mail art collages. It's a different experience, right, Maya? To send that whole idea is so interesting.
Definitely. I think there's, I found when I engaged kind of like with mail art practices, I have to think about the work in a very different way than if I'm just kind of planning to have it sit in a portfolio until whenever, just because you know it's physically traveling. So you have to think about how the piece will then arrive to someone. You know, I've sent things before which haven't been enclosed, and I'm always curious to see how it then gets to someone. And I find myself being much more considered in that process, not only in how I create the work, but then how it will be received by whoever or whomever is the recipient.
I love that, thinking about it differently. And Doretta, you not only write about art, you've worked in, you know, major contemporary museum in Hong Kong, and just are sort of someone who I think of as and your relationship to the world is connected to both. And I was wondering how that enters into your own writing.
I think a lot of times when I'm stuck, it's almost like so easy, not easy, but it's a nice way out to look at someone else's art and to describe that art, and then suddenly words come. So it's just like, if there's been a long stretch where I can't write, it's just like, if I just, even in a scene, have someone describe something and try to get at why that art is special. Something about that is just like, it's like their magic gets transferred over. And I guess it's just like in the case of your work, when you're making the visuals and you're finding things in the world and you're drawing, it's just like kind of like you're powering up your own magic in this way. I don't know if that's what that kind of feels like. I'm rambling, but I was just really interested in what Maya was saying about the experience of the visuals in your book, feeling like the experience of being in a subway system. And I really then just like thinking back to the advertisements that you've chosen to collage in here, just like I had such a moment of just like, when I think about New York, and if someone says Dr. Zizmore, I just like feel like I'm in the subway. And I don't know, I just wanted to feel that connection with your book and the choices that you made in the advertisements to kind of bring that forth.
Yeah, really good points about the advertisements. Yes, Dr. Zizmore.
There's definitely so much iconography in advertisement. You know, these people aren't actually famous. Dr. Zizmore is not a celebrity, but he is. It's the same thing of like, Dan Smith will teach you guitar, or whatever, that famous, you know, people. There's so much there's so much memory involved with, you know, successful advertising campaigns, or even ones that are localized, like something like Dr. Zizmore. And I feel like Andrea's visuals really attest to the power of advertisement in a lot of way to be a source of like visual culture, even if the content is not necessarily readily accessible to everyone, i.e. the people or things displayed are not immediately known, but they have such an impact because of how they're displayed for our visual consumption.
Yeah, absolutely, right. It is like this strange visual canon. And even though this called up all these very specific memories for me, you know, not of Russian advertisements, but just of the wallpaper of childhood, you know, where you're eye level with this sort of mysterious reality and but you know, that you invite all of that into yourself. And I think I was thinking too, I worried so much for this child, but I would see that in the way of children, her consciousness is sprawling all over everything, right? She's doodling on everything, you know, and that I found like there's something in terms of just the art and resistance and a way to kind of stab back at, you know, when she spits back at the dark, I was like, I love just sort of like seeing that desire to sort of add yourself to the environment lives in her, you know, so powerfully. And there's even at the darkest moments in this book, you know, there's still these really playful drawings, right? Or you're just sort of like, you know, giving the lady in the ad a wild tattoo and like a, you know, a boob job or whatever you're doing as a kid. And there's something about that reminded me so physically of what it's like to have very little power, you know, in a worldly sense, but really to feel that that creativity surging in you when you're a kid. That's you know, that just sort of that surge is so present and lively. And I thought a lot of the humor. That kind of getting that, and I was thinking about that too, Andrea. Like I feel like usually when I talk about tone, I'm always thinking in terms of language. So to see you sort of very physically making the tone of the book with the collage was so cool. I love that too.
Thank you.
To get the kind of light in the darkness. You know.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
So, Andrea, I think I'm going to play the time.
Good. I was just thinking.
Although it's a fascinating conversation, I'd love to hear more. If anybody has like a question they're really dying to ask but haven't asked, now this is the time to ask. And otherwise, I think Andrea is going to read a couple of sections from the book to kind of go out on, and then we'll have a kind of wrap up segment at the very end. So how does that sound, Andrea? Okay. So any of you guys, Idra, Doretta, Tony, or Maya, you guys have any last questions or comments you want to get in before?
I just want to say how restorative it was to see all of these writers and friends that I miss, Elena and Steve and Karen and all that. It's just, you know, in this very lonely time, and to have this wonderful conversation and celebrate this book together was just such a delight. So thank you, Andrea, for being the occasion.
Well, thank you. Okay. Oh, we have a special guest. Okay, I guess I'll read one more piece. I'll just continue where I was. Lend me your ear. His hair was shaved. In the photo at the bottom of my mother's purse, he was smiling in the darkness of lipstick, tissues, mints, dried up perfume. His army check arrived in the mail. A pittance, Mamushka cried, but I knew she was crying for his being stationed at the end of the world. The front, they called it in the newspapers, but we know better. The end, we chorused. We were a village of mamas and girls and the great unwashed. We packed sausages and cheese and rode on the train to Moscow. I drew pictures of a girl in braids pretending to smile back at the man in the photo. Now I'm not fooled when I glimpse him in a crowd of soldiers at the edge of the terminal, duffels at feet, downing beers in clouds of cigarette smoke, a shaved head, a flash of a smile. Papa, Papa, I hum inside. But he's just another stranger, belongs to some other girl, wife, and he's back toasting his mates before he heads off to the end, before I can even pretend he's mine. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I was just really moved, like Idra was saying, to see you all, and I really appreciate everyone zooming in and seeing all these faces, and thank you to the participants. It was very moving and inspiring. I'm very grateful.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you all for joining in. It was really great. I mean, this night, there's something nice about this format of combining a reading and conversation. You know, it doesn't always work out, but I think it worked out really well this time. And there's just something special about it. And I think it helps that all of you know each other, at least in different combinations, and that kind of intimacy of you being friends and colleagues that really came through.